Sophie Li. I'm a clinical psychologist and a postdoctoral research fellow here at the Black Dog Institute. The research that I focus on is really trying to understand what causes mental ill health in young people. I actually worked as a clinical psychologist for about 10 years before coming into the research world. And really what motivated me to begin a research career was I felt we didn't have a really strong understanding of what is causing mental illness in young people and the population more broadly. And so I wanted to contribute to the generation of new knowledge to really understand what is underlying psychopathology and using that knowledge to develop new treatments that target those mechanisms that are causing this mental ill health in the population. I think I've always been the kind of person who's interested in science and understanding things and understanding what the causes of things are. And I also would consider myself a people person. So in choosing a career in psychology and in researching mental health, it was really bringing those two things together. So the science aspect of mental health and research, but also having contact with people and being able to be at the front line, I suppose, of trying to help people who are suffering with mental health problems and concerns. The reason I'm engaged with this area of research is partly because I do want to help people, and I see that there's a lot of room for improvement in the delivery of mental health services to people in Australia and globally. But also I'm driven by the desire to understand, to understand what is going on for people and to really hear their stories and work with them to develop a better understanding so that we can develop better and more effective treatments. So one of the areas of research in mental health that I'm really interested in is understanding the effect sleep has on mental ill health, so things like depression and anxiety. What I discovered working as a clinician is that many clinicians don't prioritise treating sleep or addressing sleep problems in their clients. And one of my, aspirations was really to understand why that wasn't a priority and also to understand the impact that was having on things like depression and anxiety, and particularly in young people whose sleep tends to be inadequate, so insufficient sleep and of not adequate quality. My research takes quite an experimental approach where we actually manipulate the amount of sleep a young person might be having or measure the amount of sleep a young person is having and then look at the impact that then has on things like depressive symptoms, anxiety symptoms and general well-being. And that really gives us an understanding of the importance sleep has in the generation and maintenance of those symptoms. One thing we know about sleep is that it's a really powerful risk factor for the onset of depression, but we don't really understand why it's a risk factor. So what is the mechanism that's driving the effect that sleep has on depression? And one of the things my research has discovered is that a really significant contributing factor is the amount of time young people are spending ruminating and worrying while they're trying to get to sleep. And it looks like that increase in rumination and worry, because they're having difficulty falling asleep, is contributing to the onset of depression. Many clinicians don't prioritise addressing sleep problems in young people. We tend to focus on things like depression and anxiety. So the development of the Sleep Ninja smartphone app was really to address that gap in service provision. So to provide young people with a treatment that they could administer to themselves. And what we really hoped by developing Sleep Ninja was we would provide young people with an option to be able to improve their sleep. And we're really hopeful that would have a flow-on effect to also target depression and anxiety. So Sleep Ninja is a self-administered smartphone app. It is based on the principles of cognitive behavioural therapy for insomnia, which is the gold standard psychological treatment for sleep problems. It uses a gamified element where once the young person completes a training session with the Sleep Ninja, they're awarded a Ninja belt. And the goal is for them to level up as they complete each training session, of which there are 6, until they're a black belt in sleep, so a master of sleep. It includes elements like sleep tracking, so the young person can see how they're going in terms of whether or not their sleep is improving. It can also be used offline and only requires a small amount of data, which really suits young people who often don't have a lot of spare space or data on their smartphones. We found that Sleep Ninja was effective in improving insomnia and depression symptoms in 12 to 16-year-olds, and that was really encouraging. What we know of teenagers is that it's a really vulnerable period for the development of things like depression and anxiety. So we were curious to see whether if we targeted sleep even before that adolescent age range, whether that would have an improved impact in terms of reducing the onset of depression. So what we're doing at the moment is we've adapted and modified Sleep Ninja for 10 to 12-year-olds. It includes a parent component, so the parents can get involved in the treatment, but it's still largely a self-guided intervention for the 10 to 12-year-olds. And we're currently trialling that adapted version of Sleep Ninja in 10 to 12-year-olds to see whether it's effective in reducing insomnia, but also reducing depression symptoms. The Child Sleep Ninja trial is currently underway, and it's a large trial, so we're aiming to recruit around 200 children. It will take about 2.5 years to complete the trial, but once that's completed, we'll understand how effective it is, and then we'll be able to roll it out to the public. I'm part of the team that has developed and evaluated a new smartphone app called ClearlyMe. ClearlyMe is based on cognitive behavioural therapy principles and has been designed in collaboration with 12 to 16-year-olds, with mental health professionals and also with parents of teenagers. So it's a product that underwent a really rigorous co-design process. It's currently just completed its trial. How it came about was really there was a gap in evidence-based smartphone CBT interventions for adolescents. And so the development of ClearlyMe was to really fill that gap so that teenagers had an evidence-based and effective smartphone CBT app that they could use. There are many mental health apps commercially available on the market at the moment. And one of the, limitations of these products is that they're not evidence-based. And what I mean by that is they haven't undergone a rigorous period of evaluation to see whether or not they're actually effective in doing what they say they're going to do. So the apps that we develop at the Black Dog Institute, not only do we engage in a rigorous co-design process to develop them, so they're developed in collaboration with the people who are actually going to be using them, they also undergo a really rigorous evaluation process, which involves a randomised controlled trial. So this really allows us to determine whether or not the app is effective in doing what we say it's going to do or what we hope it's going to do, which in the case of ClearlyMe is to reduce symptoms of depression. There's really strong evidence for a correlation between screen time, so how long a person uses a digital device for, and mental health symptoms like depression and anxiety symptoms. What we don't know is the direction of that relationship, so whether it's the screens that are causing the symptoms or whether it's actually young people with symptoms are actually turning to their devices as a means of coping. And making decisions around screen time and giving young people access to their devices is really based on not a whole lot of concrete evidence. And so what I would say as a scientist and a researcher at the Black Dog Institute is we really need to engage in a lot more research and a lot more data collection before we can make really informed decisions about how young people should be using their devices and delivering recommendations around those sorts of things. My aspiration as a clinician and also as a researcher is really to improve the mental health of young Australians. And so what I would hope comes from the work that I do at Black Dog and from the apps that I've been involved in developing and evaluating is that they do contribute in that way. They do provide an accessible, helpful and meaningful resource for those young people who are seeking help with their mental health. For parents who have children who are maybe struggling a little bit, or they're not quite themselves, experiencing symptoms of depression or anxiety, my advice would be to open up a conversation with them to really get an understanding of what's going on for them, and understand that there is help available and there are resources out there to help with these really challenging sorts of issues. My advice would be the first port of call is to talk to your GP about what's happening with your child, and then take it from there. If you find my research and my work here at Black Dog interesting, please feel free to reach out to me, visit the Black Dog website. We're always happy to talk more about the work that we do here.